Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Larissa, and this year I was able to go to the most amazing party in the world, Carnival in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. I was able to plan this trip out for myself, but I had to learn so many things along the way. So here I am to make your first time trip to Rio Carnival much easier and smoother. Carnival is typically celebrated on the Friday before Ash Wednesday, which is the beginning of Lent in the Catholic celebration. It's kind of like a time to be free and celebrate all of your freest desires and everything before you give up things for Lent. This is celebrated in lots of places all over the world, mostly places with majority Catholic populations or places where there's like a descendance of Catholicism and colonization all over the world. But I will have to say the best thus far and the most celebrated that I know of, most famous, is the Carnival celebration in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Now, Carnival is celebrated, like I said, all over Brazil, and each city kind of has something different to offer, and that's something I would definitely be interested in checking out and exploring. But as far as on a global scale, Rio de Janeiro is known for its Carnival celebrations. These celebrations include these things called blocos, which are basically block parties where people are outside drinking, listening to music, having a good time, and just kind of enjoying the company of others. There's concerts, there's the show at the Sambadrome, which is a parade basically, but a parade like nothing you've ever seen. So Carnival is quite legendary in how it's celebrated, specifically in Rio de Janeiro. Recognize that you need to book your flights and also book your hotels way in advance, because this is a time where certain things like hotels in certain regions will sell out. I noticed that the hotel that I booked, I believe I booked it in maybe October of the year before, was already noting that they were having like spots sold out for that time of year because it's super popular. As far as the most popular areas to stay in Rio de Janeiro, that's typically going to be Copacabana or Ipanema. My brother and I, when we went for the time we were in Rio, we stayed in Copacabana, we stayed in Ipanema, and also during most of the celebrations of Carnival, we actually stayed in Lapa, which is more close to like the Centro area, which I think was a fantastic decision because at the end of the day, that is where a lot of more authentic kind of Carnival blocos are happening. Like we stayed right next to the Lapa arches and next to this street called Avenida Mem do Sal, I believe, and that's already the area where a lot of the bars and kind of like club-ish places exist anyways. So as you can imagine, every single night in that one region, it was poppin'. The party really didn't stop, and it started at crazy hours as well. Like we'd start to hear music and people outside kind of at like 10 a.m. and it wouldn't kind of stop until like 4 or 5-ish and stayed quiet for a couple hours, and then people were all outside again. I knew that I wanted to stay in a space that, one, was really going to facilitate, like they also had a bar on the top of their hotel, so it was like if it really was dead outside, we could kind of just go up to the bar, and also to meet people. I stayed at the Selena chain, one of the Selena locations, the one in Lapa. I can link it down here as well, but it was a great option for being really close to all the action. If you want a little bit more seclusion and you want to go away from the party, I think that that wouldn't necessarily be the best choice for you, and you wanted to stay on the beach, you would definitely want to stay in Copacabana or Ipanema. But as far as for us, my brother and I, we wanted to be directly in the action where everything was happening, so that Selena hostel was a great option. But one thing to consider is, even though the Selena chain is technically hostels, that one was more of a hotel, and it was very expensive to stay for all of those nights. For staying at that Selena property, we did stay for 4 nights, and each night came out to be about almost $300, which, like I said before, Brazil is a pretty inexpensive place to go, so that was on the real expensive side, obviously inflated because of the location as well as the time of year. So keep that in mind when booking your hotels and your stays for your trip to Carnival. Realistically speaking, anywhere that you stay in Rio during your time around Carnival is not a bad place to be. You're able to get Ubers and public transportation to all of the different blocos happening all over the area, so really it's just about finding where you want to be and enjoying your time there. I'm not sure about what was happening in Copacabana, but I'm sure that was more geared towards tourists and maybe even a more mild experience as far as the blocos go, but I might be wrong. I don't know, I wasn't there. We did end up going to blocos in Santa Teresa, which was nearby where we were in Lapa. We also went to a bloco in Ipanema, which is on the beach in Ipanema, and that was such a cool experience. And also our third day, they were talking about blocos happening in all different parts of Rio that you would never know as a tourist. So it's really like the entire city is having a great time at blocos and enjoying themselves. Next up, let's talk about what to wear. This was a really fun one for me because, as you guys know, I also work in a fashion industry. So when I get to see what people decide to wear for things, I find it such a fun experience. So for Carnival, I want you guys to understand, this is a party, and Brazilian people are not afraid to show skin, really go out there and have a great time with their costumes for Carnival. One thing I noticed is almost like if you don't dress up in any way for Carnival and you're just wearing regular street clothes, you will stand out like a sore thumb, which I find to be such a fun experience. So I'm really glad that I prepped and planned and did some research and found out some outfits that would be really cool for enjoying Carnival. Before I left, I was able to actually get a couple things from Amazon because I did some quick Google searches, watched a couple videos here on YouTube that told me a little bit of what the climate and the culture and the understanding is for time around Carnival, but I never really could have understood as full and vibrant as fun as it is without actually being there. Also checked out a couple of the shops while I was there. A lot of the shops and even like street vendors in Copacabana and Ipanema will be selling like really cheapy items that you're kind of able to wear and adorn yourself with for Carnival, and I think you guys should get them if you don't already have costumes. People go so far out, and it's really an enjoyable way to just like have self-expression and really just let yourself free. So you're able to go with as comfortable as the level as you desire. All right, so next up, let's talk about blocos, which are basically, in an American understanding, talking about block parties. So these are parties where everyone kind of meets up around a general location and people bring their coolers, people are drinking, people playing music. Some of them are more organized by the city and some of them are just as casual as, okay, everybody meets up at this location, around this region, and they just are chilling and partying all day. Most of the blocos are throughout the day, so they'll start like in the morning and they don't end until kind of whenever people feel like going home, to be honest with you. There are some Instagrams that I can actually list here that will kind of suggest where the blocos are, but also a lot of them are in Portuguese. So it's like if you have a Portuguese speaker in your group or you're really about it with Google Translate, that can be something you can use. But for my brother and I, we kind of didn't know any of that going in. So blocos, I'll be honest with you, were like one of the more difficult things to pre-research because you don't know where they're going to be until almost the day of. So I kind of was like, all right, we'll just see how this goes, going into it. But the best way that I found to find out where the blocos were was to genuinely just talk to people. Like I said, I strategically picked the hotel where we stayed at because that's somewhere where we just walked outside and there was already a lot of parties and things happening. So my brother and I walked outside of our hotel and actually followed people up the Escaladeria Celarón, which is also known as the Lapa Steps, and followed them up to the parties that were happening in Santa Teresa. So that's where we had our first day of partying because we kind of just followed the crowd outside of our hotel. And Santa Teresa was so crowded, so much fun, such a good time. And we met a lot of really cool people. Some people who were completely speaking just Portuguese and some people who were speaking more English and a combination of the two. And also we met some other tourists who were from Great Britain, I believe. Maybe Great Britain and Australia that day. And it's kind of like you see people and you're just like, hey, I heard you speaking English. What's up? Where are you guys up to? What's the moves? What's going on? So it's a really cool experience to have. If you're uncomfortable in large crowded spaces, you might not love specifically the bloco in Lapa. In Santa Teresa, because it was so crowded, you guys. At certain points, the crowd was almost just like carrying you and you had to kind of just like be like, all right, I'm here. This is what's happening right now. But eventually it kind of evened out when people all kind of got settled and stuff. But there is lots of people selling waters and caipirinhas, a couple other drinks, but mostly those two drinks like along the sides of like wherever the blocos are going to be. So there's a lot of locals who do make an income off of that. And they did have on these like official kind of looking like pennies, if you will, like not jerseys, but like not shirts, but these things. And so they were selling the caipirinhas, and you can see them make the caipirinhas in front of your face, and also selling waters. And so that was something that was really cool to me, because it's obviously like incorporated into, like regulated a little bit about what's going on. Santa Teresa was so much fun. We met a group of Brazilians, actually, a group of Cariocas, who were really cool, and they were advising us on where to go for the next day. The next day, we actually went to a bloco that was in Ipanema. Something else I wanted to talk about is the kissing culture. That's really common during Carnival for people to say beija, and beija means kiss, more specifically like want to kiss. So people either around you will chant like beija, beija. People will say like beija, like speaking to you specifically, and you can just respectfully say like no thank you, no beija, and like kind of remove yourself. You don't have to be like shocked or weirded out, because that is a common cultural thing that you'll probably see happening as well. And don't like get weird about it, just no thank you and move on. Ipanema was so cool. It was such an interesting experience to be able to be on Ipanema Beach, like in the sand on the beach, looking at the sun setting, like seeing all these people. It's almost like a big beach party, but like same deal, like music, fun, things going on, people hanging out. For a long time at the Ipanema Bloco, my brother and I kind of were like, oh wow, like this is a lot of Brazilians. Like it wasn't super touristy, because we weren't really hearing anybody speak English. Eventually at the end of the night, we did find some more friends at that bloco as well, and they were all really cool. Shout out to any of you guys if you guys are checking out this video. They were a group that then themselves had met up at a hostel, so it's a group of like 8 or 9 of them, and they didn't, for the most part, like some of them were coupled up, but for the most part they didn't really know each other. They all met up at the hostel that they stayed at and then went out to the blocos together. So it's really easy to meet people, 1 while traveling, 2 while being out at these blocos. We did end up going to dinner with them, and they invited us to a bloco the next day, but we didn't actually make it out to that one. But the 3rd day of our Carnival celebrations, which I believe was Sunday, we actually just stayed around where our hotel was, which was in Lapa. Another category that I think is really important, that I really want you guys to pay attention to, because this can really make or break your experience at Carnival, and that is focusing on safety. Now this, I'll be honest with you, was a really big concern of mine in going to Rio in general, because I had heard so many different things, and so many travelers even here on YouTube talking about different experiences that they had in Rio de Janeiro. But for my personal experience, as I will always speak on, because I can only experience the world through my eyes and through my experiences, Rio was not a horribly dangerous place. It was just more like, you need to keep your head on a swivel and don't look like a typical tourist who's kind of waving things about and not really paying attention to their surroundings. Also, would not recommend drinking too much. That's something I personally recommend for anybody traveling anywhere, because already drinking impairs your sense of logic, impairs your sense of awareness, all of these things. But on top of all that, being in another country, you don't really know what's going on around you most of the time. You can't speak the local language. So my personal limit was 1 or 2 drinks, because I wanted to obviously enjoy the time spent having a good time at Carnival and, you know, communing with people and everything else. But I definitely wanted to be able to keep my wits about me and remove myself from a situation if necessary. I also didn't see too many Brazilians like getting messed up gross drunk, and I think that's important to recognize what the culture is around the activity you're participating in. So people were sipping, people were having a good time, but nobody was like all out throwing up nasty gross drunk. As far as the blocos, my brother and I always kind of left the blocos before it got to be too dark. Usually that was because we were already outside all day, but I do think also, you know, things can change and vibes of things and energy of things can change once it does get dark. Overall, as safety goes, I would not recommend experiencing Carnival as a solo traveling woman, nor would I almost even recommend it as in just like 2 women, even maybe if you said like a group of 3 or like a larger group. But I just feel like in general, it can be a really chaotic time, and you will be approached a lot pretty often, and it's like like really just a lot of things going on at once. And I was there with my brother, and even in the times where we were split up for moments, like we got separated in a crowd, I was approached and not bothered necessarily. Like it wasn't like anything pushy, but like I said, with the culture of Carnival already kind of existing, where it's very like skin friendly and kissing and honestly kind of sexualized in general, not like in a disrespectful manner. Like I fully appreciate and respect the fact that like things are different in different places, but I would not say that like for me personally as a solo traveling woman, that would be somewhere I was comfortable with in that instance. So that's just my honest recommendation about traveling solo as a woman in Carnival. Last but not least, let's talk about the celebration at the Sambadrome. So this is, in my opinion, kind of like the cherry on top of already a really fun and crazy and colorful and energetic and vibrant Carnival season. Basically, this is a location where they have like this parade, but it's actually samba, which is the kind of typical dance of Rio de Janeiro. It's well known. It actually originated from the enslaved people, brought over the African kind of influences and styles to be able to create samba dancing. It is the parade that celebrates samba. So these are a bunch of different samba schools that are well known in the Rio de Janeiro region that compete every single year. The samba schools compete to basically determine who's the best samba school. So I imagine over the years it's probably started off a bit smaller, but it's grown and grown and grown and grown. So there are, I believe, 3 or 4 nights of performances, and one of them is like the younger kids perform and the other ones are like the top samba schools. I'm not quite sure on like the entire breakdown of how that goes, but I can definitely link more information here so you can really understand the ins and outs of the samba schools and how they all work. But basically it is a giant parade, and you can go see the samba schools basically compete against each other throughout the parade. So they have like choreographed routines and costumes and parade floats and fireworks. It is truly, as I can say this, honest to God, the best show on earth. There's obviously so much effort and energy put into making the costumes and things being energetic, and the samba dancers are just so fluid, and the motions are beautiful, and there's so much synchronicity. Like it is amazing, like mind-blowing as a show. And so that is something you definitely cannot miss if you plan on going to Carnival in Rio de Janeiro. To get those tickets, you're going to have to get them pretty well in advance because the good seats for the best shows do sell out. So I was able to buy my tickets December beforehand, and I actually used the official website. Like I said, I can link that down below as well. I didn't really know where to sit within like the grandstand, but I think I was in section 3, which I was told was a pretty good section because the Sambadrome itself is like a long parade route, and it's this structure that's like built and stays in Rio de Janeiro. Like they don't take it down, it's always there. It's the same structure, and it goes by order. So it's like obviously section 1, section 2, section 3, section 4, and so section 1, 2, and 3 are where like the judges sections are, as well as like the beginning sections, so that you're able to see like the more fresh, I guess, version, because as you can imagine, that is a very long parade route, and towards the end the samba dancers do get tired, and I don't think the samba is probably as fresh and synchronized. So section 3 was a really good section, therefore also a more expensive section. And make sure that you don't have anything planned for the morning of the next day, because this is not an exaggeration when I tell you the show did not end, or at least we left around 4 or 5 a.m. They said that this actually was a show that was running behind, but there's so many schools and there's so many so many floats, and they move pretty slowly. So you really are sitting there kind of like enjoying the dancing, enjoying the music, and then you look down at your phone and you're like, wow, that's crazy. It's like 4 and 5 a.m. So we actually made the walk back towards our hostel about 5 a.m. So needless to say, we had plans for the next day, and that's not something I would redo. So if you go to the Sambadrome show on Sunday night, please do not make early plans for Monday. That's all that I have for you guys for today. I learned so much through this experience of going to my first Carnival. It was so worth it to meet all those wonderful people, have that exciting experience, and really check something off of my bucket list. If you learned anything in this video, or you have something to share from your own experiences, please comment that down below. Check out my other videos, my vlog of my time in Carnival, and also my time in Rio de Janeiro. And as always, have a great time and stay traveling. Bye guys.